It was one of those Colorado nights where the cold doesn't just sit outside your house. It squeezes through the windows, crawls under your skin, and settles right inside your bones. Minus 20 degrees. Wind screaming like it had something personal against the whole damn street. 118 Maple Ridge. End of the block. No lights on. Just this old, tired house, hunched over like it had given up a long time ago. And inside, well, inside was hell. Something slammed, hard, like a chair crashing into a wall. Then a man's voice, low at first, almost like a growl, then rising suddenly, sharp enough to cut through the cold. "Don't you walk away from me!" Another crash. Something glass this time. A woman crying or gasping. It's hard to tell when fear twists every sound into something worse. And under a small wooden bed with peeling white paint, a little girl curled into herself so tightly she almost disappeared. Emily Carter, 7 years old, wearing pink pajama pants with tiny snowflakes. The kind kids pick because they look happy, cute, safe. But nothing felt safe right then. Emily pressed her hands over her ears so hard her fingertips went numb. She tried not to breathe too loud, tried not to move, tried not to exist. Because every tiny sound she made felt like it might be the one that gave her away. And honestly, in that moment, she thought she might die. Kids shouldn't think that. But she did. The bed frame above her shook when something hit the wall in the next room. Dust fell down in little clouds, making her blink fast just to keep her eyes from stinging. Her heart? It wasn't beating anymore. It was hammering, like it was trying to break out of her chest and run for its own life. She whispered, barely a breath, "Please stop. Please stop." But the house didn't stop shaking. Anyone walking by outside might have thought the wind made that awful rattling on the windows. But nope, the wind had nothing to do with it. That sound? That was fear. Raw, ugly fear echoing through the walls. Then came footsteps, heavy, slow, purposeful. Each one hit the floor like the house itself was flinching. Emily's body froze so fast it hurt. Her breathing went thin, quick, panicked. The man barked, not asked, "Where the hell did she go?" Emily knew that sound. The boots, the weight, the rhythm. Kids who live in fear memorize those things. The man's shadow slid under the bedroom door, long and crooked, stretching toward the bed. Emily dug her fingers into the carpet, knuckles turning white. She stopped breathing altogether. The doorknob jiggled. And God, that sound. That's the kind of sound that lives in your bones forever. A slow metal click. Cold. Inevitable. The door creaked open. "Emily," he said, dragging out her name. "I know you're in here." Quiet now. And quiet is worse. Quiet means intention. A floorboard moaned under his weight. Another step. Another. He was coming closer. Emily started shaking uncontrollably, not scared shaking, survival shaking. The man moved around the room, She could hear him breathing, smell the alcohol, hear him pick something up, then toss it back down. Then, silence. And that silence? It was louder than any scream. Emily felt the world shrinking, the space under the bed growing tighter, closing in. Her teeth chattered, her hands trembled, and right then she thought, a thought she'd never say out loud. This is it. He's going to find me. And if he does, I'm not getting out of this house. She didn't know help was coming. She didn't know someone outside had just dialed 911. She didn't know their red and blue lights were slicing through the storm. All she knew was the sound of boots turning toward her bed. All she knew was fear. Real fear. The kind that freezes a little girl in time. Honestly, if the world had ended right there under that bed, Emily wouldn't have been surprised. But life, yeah, life's weird. Sometimes it breaks you, and sometimes it cracks open just enough to let something unexpected in. It started with a sound, not the man's boots, not the wind. Something deeper. A thud. Heavy, sharp, final, like the whole front of the house had just been punched by God himself. Boom! The floor shook. Dust exploded from the ceiling. A picture frame in the hallway fell and shattered. Then came shouting, loud, controlled, nothing like the rage Emily knew. "Riverbend SWAT! Open your hands where we can see them!" Footsteps, lots of them, stormed through the house. Voices layered over each other, radios crackling, boots pounding. The kind of chaos that wasn't aimed at her for once. Emily's eyes flew open. For the first time in what felt like forever, the fear didn't get worse. It paused. Just a little. And then another sound. Different. Lower. Closer. A growl? No. Not angry. Focused. Something brushed against the floor. Something big. Emily shrank back instinctively, her spine pressing into the cold wall behind her. She didn't dare look. Not yet. "Thor, clear left." That voice wasn't angry either. It was calm, strong, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Thor. The name floated in her mind, unfamiliar, but warm somehow. She didn't know yet that this one word would change her entire life. Everything outside the bedroom blurred together. Shouts, commands, the man yelling something back. But all of it drifted away as the sound of paws moved toward her room. Soft, heavy, steady, like footsteps built not to scare, but to protect. The door swung open, slamming into the wall. A beam of cold white light sliced across the room, bright, harsh. Emily flinched, covering her eyes. Her breath came out in tiny bursts, fogging the air. "Thor, sweep!" And then he appeared. Not the man she feared. Not another shout. Not another pair of angry boots. But a dog. A huge German shepherd stepped into the room, fur dusted with snow, chest rising and falling with purpose. He wasn't wild or frantic. No. Thor moved like he could see through shadows, like nothing in the world surprised him anymore. His ears twitched, his nose lowered to the floor, and he padded straight toward the bed. Emily's heart leaped into her throat. He's gonna bite me. Kids don't know the difference between danger and rescue when their whole world is danger. Thor crouched low, belly nearly touching the floor, and slid his head toward the shadows beneath the bed. Emily went completely still. Her tiny fingers dug into the carpet. Her toes curled until they cramped. Thor paused, sniffed the air, and then, gently, so gently she almost didn't feel it, he nudged her wrist with his nose. A soft, warm, real touch. Not a strike. Not a grab. Not pain. Just contact. Emily's breath trembled out of her chest. Her brain scrambled between running, screaming, or melting. Thor nudged her again, firmer, but not rough, like he was saying, pitch, twost. Hey, kid. I found you. You're okay. Tears pooled instantly in her eyes. His eyes. God. His eyes were different. Deep, warm brown. Steady, patient, like he was waiting for her to make the next move. Outside the room, Officer Ryan Hale's voice called out, "Thor, talk to me, boy." Thor barked once, short, confident. Emily flinched, but Thor didn't move. He stayed beside her, anchoring her in place. Boots rushed to the doorway, a flashlight angled downward. A man in tactical gear knelt, lowering himself until he was eye level with them. Hey there, he whispered. Are you Emily? Emily couldn't speak. Her throat closed, her lips trembled. Thor sensed it, and gently placed his paw on her forearm. Just a little pressure, just enough to say, I'm here. That tiny gesture hit her like warmth in a frozen room, like someone lighting a candle in a blizzard. Her teeth chattered. Once, twice, and then, slowly, her hand slid out from under the bed and rested on Thor's fur. It wasn't brave. It wasn't steady. But it was hers. Officer Hale's eyes softened. Good job, Thor. Keep with her. Emily curled her fingers into Thor's fur, and for the first time that night, she felt something she'd forgotten even existed. Hope. Not big hope. Not loud hope. More like a flicker, a spark, a tiny light fighting its way through the storm. The kind of hope that whispers, hey, maybe you're going to survive this. But trauma doesn't care about new walls, or soft lighting, or the smell of fresh laundry. It follows you. It sticks to you, like smoke. So yeah, the night Thor found her wasn't the end. It was just step one. The Collins family lived in a yellow 2-story house on the east side of Riverbend. Quiet street, tall trees, the kind of neighborhood where people wave while dragging their trash bins to the curb. The kind of place you'd expect to hear wind chimes, not screaming. Perfect on paper. Warm, safe, stable. That was where Emily was taken. Mrs. Collins had one of those soft, mom-type voices, like she was born to read bedtime stories. Mr. Collins talked a little too much, but in a well-meaning kind of way. They'd been foster parents for years. They had experience, patience, a living room full of kids' drawings from children they'd helped. But even then, even with all that good intention, the moment Emily crossed their doorway, it was like she brought a piece of Maple Ridge's darkness with her. She stood there, tiny, clutching the blanket the paramedics gave her, staring into the Collins home like she wasn't sure it was real. Mrs. Collins knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, this is your room, okay? You can put anything you want on the shelves. We'll get you new PJs, new clothes, whatever you need." Emily didn't answer, didn't nod, didn't blink much either. She just walked in slow, like her feet weren't convinced the floor would hold her weight. The room was beautiful. Purple comforter, a little bunny-shaped lamp, fairy lights across the window. Any other 7-year-old girl would have squealed. Emily didn't touch anything. She didn't even take off her shoes. She just backed into the corner, hands clasped in front of her like she was bracing for impact. Mr. Collins tried to lighten the mood. "Hey, Em. Can I call you Em? We've got hot chocolate, with tiny marshmallows, the good ones, the kind that melt real fast." Nothing. "I can bring it to you? Or maybe we can sit at the table and—" Emily slid her back down the wall and hugged her knees. That was all the answer he got. The first night was the hardest. Mrs. Collins left the door cracked open, hallway light on. She sat on the carpet outside the room for an hour, whispering, "We're right here if you need us." But Emily lay on top of the covers, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling like she was waiting for something to Every tiny sound, the fridge humming, trees tapping the window, heater clicking on, made her flinch. At 2:14 a.m. she woke screaming. Not loud screaming, not thrashing. No. The quiet kind. The kind that sounds like someone drowning inside their own chest. Mrs. Collins rushed in, door hitting the wall. But Emily didn't even look at her. She whispered over and over, voice cracking, "Don't let him find me. Don't let him find me." Mrs. Collins held her. Emily stayed stiff as a board, like a hug was foreign, almost dangerous. Eventually she fell asleep sitting up, head resting on Mrs. Collins's shoulder, breath shallow and uneven. That became the routine, night after night. Fear after fear. Emily didn't speak during the day, didn't eat much, didn't watch TV, didn't color, didn't play with stuffed animals. She didn't even open the curtains. Every time a car passed the window, she froze. Every time someone knocked, she hid behind Mrs. Collins. Every time she heard a man's voice, even on TV, her whole body tensed. It was like she wasn't living in Riverbend at all. She was still stuck on Maple Ridge, under that bed, waiting for footsteps. One afternoon, Mrs. Collins found her sitting on the floor, staring at the corner. Nothing there. Just space. But Emily stared like she was watching something replay in her mind. Something awful. Mrs. Collins kneeled. "Honey, what are you looking at?" Emily blinked once, then whispered, just one word: shadows. The first thing she'd said since leaving the hospital. Mrs. Collins didn't push. She just sat beside her, letting silence be enough. Because deep down, she knew the truth. This wasn't going to be a quick recovery. Not something you fix with cookies and bedtime stories. Emily was carrying something heavy, too heavy for someone so small. And yet, with all the fear, all the silence, there was one thing Emily kept asking for. Not with words. She still didn't talk much. But every time Officer Hale brought Thor to the porch for a quick visit, Emily's whole body changed. Her shoulders loosened. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes, usually dull and distant, lit up just a little. She never ran to him, never hugged him, never smiled. She just existed differently around him. Less like prey, more like someone trying to come back to life. Thor would sit in front of her, tail thumping once, gently, like he understood more than any human ever could. And honestly, he probably did. Because sometimes, the only thing that can pull a child out of nightmares is something that isn't human at all. And here's the real question. The one I'm dying to ask you. If you were in Emily's shoes, who would you cling to more? A. A kind foster mom. B. Officer Hale. Thor or 1. You honestly don't know? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious what your heart says. After everything you just saw Emily go through, you'd think the world would give her a break, right? But healing, it's not a straight line. It's messy, tangled. Some days you're okay, and other days, you're right back under that bed again. But here's the thing. Every once in a while, something, or someone, shows up and warms a part of you you didn't even know was still alive. For Emily, that someone wasn't human. It was Thor. Officer Ryan Hale started bringing Thor to the Collins house once a week at first. Well, officially once a week. Unofficially, let's just say the visits got a little more frequent. Ryan was 32, but looked younger when he smiled, which wasn't often, except around Thor. Rugged Colorado look, flannel shirts, scruffy beard, the kind of guy who fixes his own truck because he doesn't trust a mechanic to listen to the engine right. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his voice had that calm weight, the kind that could convince someone everything was going to be okay. But Thor was the real magic. Every time that big German shepherd stepped through the Collins front door, the entire atmosphere shifted. The house, always a little too quiet from Emily's silence, suddenly felt warmer. Mrs. Collins noticed it first. The moment Thor padded into the living room, Emily, who usually hid behind the couch, would peek her head out. Just a little, like a timid deer checking if the forest was safe. Thor never rushed her, never barked, never moved suddenly. He'd just sit, tall, proud, still. and wait. 10 seconds, 10 minutes, and soon, hour. Thor didn't care about time. He cared about her. And then came the moment everything changed. A Thursday afternoon, sunny but cold, the kind of day where the air bites your nose. Emily sat on the floor, knees tucked to her chest, arms around her legs like she was holding herself together. Ryan opened the door slowly. "Hey, kiddo." Thor wanted to say hi. Thor trotted in, tail swishing low and soft, not excited, but inviting, asking without words, "Is today a good day for this?" Emily didn't move. Thor walked toward her, step by step, like approaching a wounded bird. Then he stopped, lowered himself, and gently rested his head on her knee. Just placed it there, like a weight, a warm, living weight saying, "I've got you." Emily froze, but not in fear this time, in shock. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched, her fingers twitched, and then, so slow you could almost hear the seconds passing, her hand lifted, half an inch, 1 inch, hovering. Then she touched him, just one finger, the lightest brush of fur. Thor didn't move, didn't blink, didn't shift. He just let her. Emily let out a shaky breath, the kind where a kid isn't sure if they're about to cry or collapse. Mrs. Collins covered her mouth. Ryan looked away, because even tough K-9 officers break a little at moments like this. And Emily, who had spent weeks curled up like a ghost, leaned forward. Not fast, not bold, but enough. Enough to press her face into Thor's neck. Enough to cling to him like he was the only solid thing in a shattering world. Her little hands grabbed fistfuls of his fur. Her whole body shuddered, not with fear, but release. Silent crying, the exhausted kind. Thor let her, still, warm. A breathing shield against the nightmares clawing at her mind. And if you'd been in that room, you would have felt it. The shift, the thaw, like watching ice melt after the longest winter. From that day on, Emily chose Thor, even over the Collins family, even over Officer Hale. He became her safe place. Nightmares? She called for Thor. Didn't want to eat? Thor nudged the bowl closer. Sudden noises. Thor stepped in front of her, chest out, ready to face whatever she couldn't. And the craziest part? Emily talked more to Thor than to any human. Not real words, but whispers. Little breaths into his fur, like she was stitching herself back together through him. And Thor, God, that dog understood. He always understood. A bond was forming, not forced, not taught, born out of fear, but built with safety, with patience, with warmth. And once a child ties their broken heart to the thing that saved them, Yeah, that bond becomes unbreakable. It was one of those weird Colorado days where it's snowing and raining at the same time. The sky couldn't decide what season it wanted to be, so it threw everything down at once. Icy rain slapped against the Collins windows so hard it sounded like handfuls of pebbles being thrown at the glass. Inside, the living room was dim and warm, the kind of warm that should have felt comforting. Except Emily was curled up on the rug again, knees to her chest. Not panicked, not shaking, just small. Small in that way kids get when the world has been too loud, for too long. Thor lay beside her, head resting near her feet, big chest rising and falling slow, steady, almost like he was trying to lend her his heartbeat. Officer Hale had come by for one of their unofficial visits. He stood near the door, shaking rain off his jacket, trying to look casual. But he wasn't fooling anyone. He watched Emily the way someone watches a candle when they're terrified the wind might blow it out. The house hummed with quiet, except for the rain, the wind, and Emily's tiny breaths. Then, something shifted. Emily tilted her head, eyes drawn to Thor like gravity was pulling her. Her lips parted, just barely, the way you do right before speaking, but still unsure if you're allowed. Officer Hale froze mid-step. Mrs. Collins stopped stirring her tea. Even Thor lifted an ear. Emily swallowed, hard, like the word was stuck in her throat. Her fingers twitched. Her chest trembled. Then, in the softest whisper a human could make, a sound scared to exist. Thor. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear. It wasn't even a full breath. But it was there. And the whole room reacted like time had snapped in half. Time 800 song. Officer Hale blinked twice, then covered his mouth, tears glossing his eyes. Holy God. She spoke. Mrs. Collins gasped, hand flying to her chest as if her knees were giving out. And Thor didn't move at all. He just scooted 1 inch closer, resting his head on her ankle. Emily breathed in, shaky, unsure. Her hands lifted slightly, like she was surprised the word had actually escaped her body. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, so full it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Hale wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Emily, kiddo, did you just... She didn't answer, but she looked at Thor again. Really looked. Like for the first time she could see past the fog of nightmares. Thor's tail thumped once, and that tiny thump, that was the moment everything inside her chest cracked open. Emily crawled, slowly at first, then faster, until she was pressed against Thor's side. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur, letting out a small, broken sound. Not quite a cry, not quite a laugh. Something in between. Like her heart had been holding its breath for months, and finally exhaled. Thor shifted just enough to press his head against her shoulder. Officer Hale let out a breath. like someone dropping a weight they'd been carrying way too long. Good boy, Thor. God, you're a miracle. Emily didn't let go. She clung to Thor like he was the last warm thing on earth. Mrs. Collins knelt beside them. Sweetheart, you did so good. You're so brave. Emily didn't look up, but she whispered again, soft, muffled into Thor's fur. Hale leaned closer. Emily, sweetheart, what did you say? Time 9. She sniffed, then whispered, He came back. Mrs. Collins's heart dropped. Before she could speak, Emily shook her head quickly, pressing deeper into Thor's fur, hiding from her own words. It's okay, Hale whispered softly. You can talk when you're ready. You don't have to rush. And he was right. She didn't need to say more. She'd already broken the silence that held her hostage for 4 months. One word, one name, one fragile breath. Thor. And that was enough to start everything. The healing, the bravery, the fight for justice that was coming next. Because when a child speaks for the first time in 4 months, yeah, it means something big is coming, something the world isn't ready for. It started with a knock on the Collins front door, a polite knock, a normal knock. But in that house, any knock felt like a warning. Mrs. Collins opened the door, and 2 officers stood there. She recognized them instantly, one from the original case, one from the Riverbend precinct. Mrs. Collins, the older officer said softly, we need to talk with you, and with Emily. Her stomach dropped. Is she safe? That was her first question. Not what happened. Not why are you here? Just, is she safe? Yes, ma'am, the officer said. She's safe, but He hesitated, cleared his throat, looked away. We need her to testify. Mrs. Collins froze. Testify? She's 7. I know, he said quietly. But Derek Miles is refusing to plead out. And without Emily's testimony, the DA may not have enough to keep him behind bars. Behind her, a mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the tile. The officers flinched. She didn't even look down. You can't expect her to. She can't. She's barely speaking, she whispered. The second officer stepped forward. She doesn't have to speak much, just enough to confirm what she saw, enough to validate the charges. Mrs. Collins didn't respond. Couldn't. Her heart was pounding too loud. Then, small footsteps creaked down the stairs. Emily, thin, quiet, wearing Thor's old K9 bandana like a scarf, peeked around the railing. Her eyes flicked from the officers to the Collinses, and instantly she sensed something was wrong. Some kids feel fear before anyone speaks. Emily had become an expert. Thor, lying near the couch, stood the second she appeared. Not in alarm, just support, like he could already feel the storm coming. That night was bad, not screaming bad, Not tantrum bad. Worse. The quiet kind of bad. The kind where a child goes still in a way no child should ever go still. Mrs. Collins sat Emily at the table, explaining gently, softly, what the officers had said. When the words sank in, "You have to go to court, sweetheart." Emily's little body recoiled like she'd been struck. Her breathing stuttered. Her eyes widened, glassy. Her hands shook beneath the table. Then she slid off the chair and crawled straight to Thor. Not walked, not ran. Crawled, like her legs forgot how to be legs. She grabbed him, clutching fistfuls of fur like she was falling off a cliff and he was the only thing holding her. And then she broke. Not loud crying, not wailing, just a silent collapse. Her chest trembled, her shoulders shook, her breath kept catching, tears streaming without sound. The kind of crying no adult knows how to fix. Thor curled around her, lowering himself so she could bury her face in his neck. His tail wrapped around her hip like an improvised blanket. Officer Hale arrived 20 minutes later. He walked through the door, saw Emily gripping Thor like her life depended on it, and his entire face tightened. "Oh, God," he whispered. "She knows." He knelt beside her, lowering himself to eye level. "Emily, kiddo, look at me, please." She didn't. She only pressed closer to Thor, shaking harder. Hale exhaled. Not like a cop. Time 300 mems. But like a man hurting for someone he cared about. "Emily," he murmured, voice cracking. "I know you're scared, but you won't be alone. I'll be right there. Thor will be right there. We're not leaving you." She shook her head violently, fists tightening in Thor's fur. "No court. No. No." Her voice broke, shattering like thin ice beneath too much weight. Hale closed his eyes. Because hearing that, hearing a child beg like that, it does something to you. Later that night, long after the house went quiet, Emily still hadn't moved. She stayed wrapped in Thor's fur on the rug. Thor didn't sleep either, nudging her gently every time her breathing hitched. At 3:17 a.m., she whispered, "Thor, don't let him take me." Hale sat up instantly. Her voice was tiny, terrified, desperate. He walked over, sat beside her, placed a hand on Thor's back. "He won't," Hale said softly, voice thick. "Not while we're here. Not while Thor's here. You're safe, kiddo." Emily didn't answer, but she didn't let go either. All the light she'd begun to regain, all the fragile progress, all the hope returning to her small chest, it felt swallowed by the dark again. Because fear remembers, and courtrooms demand the truth, even from children terrified to speak it. And the worst part? Emily wasn't wrong to be scared. Courtrooms don't always protect. People don't always believe kids. And monsters. Sometimes monsters wear nice shirts and confident smiles. The question now wasn't whether she could testify. The question was, pitch twist, Could she survive it? The hallways smelled like cold metal and old paper. You know that scent? Like the air's too clean, but also somehow dusty? Emily walked in holding Thor's leash with both hands, knuckles white, the little K9 boot strapped to her leg like armor. People stared, some with sympathy, some with judgment, some with that strange mix of curiosity and pity people get around painful things. Officer Hale walked beside her, moving slow, like he was ready to block a bullet if he had to. But the second the courtroom doors opened, the vibe shifted. It wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. It was sharp. Cold. A place that chews up the weak. Thor let out a soft grumble, deep in his chest, like he could already smell the danger. Emily tightened her grip. When they called her to the stand, she walked like a little ghost. Silent steps, shoulders hunched, eyes glued to the floor. The K9 boot thudded against the wood with every step, a reminder to everyone in that room why she was there. She sat down slowly. Thor lay at her feet, head resting gently on her shoe. Then the defense attorney stood. Samuel Drake, a man who looked like he ironed his smile every morning. Sleek suit, polished shoes, hair combed so perfectly it didn't dare move. His voice was smooth in that fake friendly way TV villains talk right before stabbing someone metaphorically. He approached Emily with a smile that wasn't a smile. "Good morning, Emily," he said, like he was talking to a toddler. Emily didn't look up. Her fingers twisted together on her lap. Drake circled her slowly, holding his legal pad like a prop. "So," he said, dragging the word out, "you're telling us you know exactly what you saw that night. Is that right? Time 800 times." Emily shrank half an inch. "Yes." "Ah," he chuckled, actually chuckled, as if a 7-year-old, with a very active imagination, could distinguish fear from fantasy. The room felt it, the shift, the cruelty wrapped in charm. He leaned on the rail, face inches from hers. "You're so little," he said softly. "Isn't it possible, just possible, that you made some of it up?" Someone in the gallery laughed under their breath. Others followed. Snickers, whispers, judgment that didn't even hide. Emily's breath hitched. Her throat tightened. Thor lifted his head sharply. A low warning vibration rolled through his chest. Drake smirked at the dog. "Oh yes, your little hero." He pointed at the K9 boot on her leg. "And what's this? This prop." He waved his hand like it was a joke. "You wore this today for sympathy, didn't you?" Another burst of cruel laughter. Officer Hale's jaw clenched so tight a vein pulsed in his neck. The judge tapped his gavel once. "Watch your tone, Mr. Drake." "Of course, Your Honor," he said politely, pretending. "I'm simply asking, why the theatrics? The dog boot? The quivering lip? The frightened act?" Emily's hands shook uncontrollably. Her chest rose too fast. Her chin dipped lower and lower. Drake stepped closer. You're very good at pretending, Emily. Very dramatic. Very imaginative. The jury shifted, not in sympathy, in doubt. The air felt thick, suffocating, like watching someone drown while everyone pretends they don't see it. Emily's eyes filled. Her voice cracked before it even formed sound. Thor pressed his nose against her knee. Drake noticed, and instead of stopping, he doubled down. "Oh, look," he laughed. "Even the dog's doing a better job than she is." Giggles, snorts, whispered cruelty, and Emily. Emily folded in on herself like a dying flame. Tears slid silently down her cheeks, hitting the wooden rail like tiny drops of heartbreak. Drake leaned in, voice low, sharp. "Sweetheart, are you sure you didn't dream it?" Emily froze. Her breath stopped. Thor growled. Quiet, deep, thunder rolling through the courtroom. Hale stepped forward before the bailiff blocked him. The judge lifted a hand. "That's enough, Mr. Drake." But the damage was done. She couldn't run, couldn't scream, couldn't answer. She just sat there, crumbling, in front of strangers who didn't know her, didn't care, didn't understand. It was the lowest point yet. And Thor, God bless that dog, pressed himself against her leg like he was trying to shield her with his entire body. But even he couldn't stop the storm. Not yet. Be honest. If you were sitting in that courtroom, would you have 1. Stood up for Emily, called out the lawyer, walked out because you couldn't watch, or something else entirely? Samuel Drake didn't let up. Of course he didn't. He strutted back toward the jury, hands clasped behind his back like he was teaching a class called How to Break a Child 101. "So," he said, pacing slowly, "we have a little girl, 7 years old, terrified of the dark, wearing a dog boot like some kind of badge, expecting us to believe a story she barely understands herself." He paused, then turned sharply, pointing right at her. "This is not trauma. This is theatrics." A couple people nodded. A couple whispered. A couple sucked their teeth like they agreed. Emily's shoulders curled inward, shrinking, 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 like she wished she could disappear under the wooden witness stand. Thor felt it, felt her collapse like a shockwave. His ears flicked sharply, his head lifted. Hale whispered, "Easy, boy. Stay." But Thor wasn't listening anymore. Because the moment Samuel Drake opened his mouth again, with that oily voice dripping smugness, saying, "And really, sweetheart, what proof do you even—" It happened. It snapped, like a wire pulled too tight. Thor exploded upward, not aggressive, not vicious, just fast. The leash jerked so hard it almost ripped out of Officer Hale's hand. The entire courtroom jumped. The judge slammed his gavel. "Officer, control that dog!" The bailiff took one step forward, and Thor let out a sound that froze the entire room. A single bark. Not loud, not panicked, not confused. A deep, resonant, soul-shaking bark that vibrated through the courtroom walls. And then he didn't lunge at Samuel Drake, didn't growl at the judge, didn't act dangerous at all. He went for Emily. Or more specifically, the boot on Emily's leg. Thor planted both paws on the edge of the witness stand. Gasps filled the room, and he dug his nose into the black K9 boot strapped to her shin. Not sniffing, pushing, shoving, urgent. Emily flinched, startled. Thor barked again, harsher, desperate, like he was yelling at the world. Officer Hale half stood. "Thor, what are you—" Drake scoffed loudly. "Oh, for God's sake, now even the dog is trying to testify." Thor snapped his head toward Drake and growled. A low, primal, chest-deep growl. A sound that shut Drake up instantly. The judge barked, "Officer Hale, remove that dog now!" But Hale didn't move, because he was staring at Thor. And Thor wasn't acting out. He was trying to show something. Thor shoved his nose under the boot again, pawing, scratching, digging, like the answer to everything was inside it. Emily's breath trembled. She looked terrified, confused, lost. "Thor? Why?" she whispered. And then she froze, because she remembered. Not everything, just enough. A flash, a sound, a secret. Her trembling hand touched the boot. "He wants me to open it." The courtroom went dead silent. Even the judge didn't breathe. Hale stepped forward, slowly, like approaching a bomb. "Emily, sweetheart, time 200 mems. Can you take it off?" Her fingers shook so hard she could barely grab the strap. But Thor stayed pressed to her leg, steady, anchoring her. She pulled the Velcro. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The boot slid off and clattered to the floor. Gasps rippled across the room. Something shifted inside it. A tiny metallic click. Hale crouched, reached inside, and froze. His fingers touched something cold, small, metallic, impossible. He pulled it out slowly. The courtroom stared. In the center of Hale's shaking hand was a miniature voice recorder, covered in lint. A little dented, but intact. Emily whispered, voice cracking, I hid it, but I forgot." Thor let out a low, triumphant rumble, like he'd waited months for this moment. Hale stood slowly, holding the recorder like a miracle. "Your Honor," he said, voice breaking, "I think we have evidence." The courtroom erupted. The judge slammed the gavel uselessly. Gasps, reporters scrambling, jurors covering their mouths. Emily cried silently into Thor's fur, and Samuel Drake, Mr. Confident, Mr. Smug, Mr. She's just imaginative, stood there pale, speechless, beaten, before the recording even played. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. Thor made sure of that. It felt like the kind of plot twist you only see in movies. The moment where the whole theater gasps at once. Because once Thor dragged that boot off Emily's leg, revealing something hidden inside. The entire courtroom wasn't just watching anymore. They were waiting, holding their breath, staring at the boot on the floor like it was a cursed treasure chest. Nobody moved. Not Emily, not Officer Hale, not even the judge. And then, gosh, the smallest sound, like a marble hitting hardwood. A tiny metal device rolled out of the boot, bounced once, spun in a slow, perfect circle, and settled dead center on the courtroom floor. A mini voice recorder, the kind used by undercover cops, not something a 7-year-old would ever own, let alone hide. For 2 full seconds, no one breathed. Then, "Is that?" the prosecutor whispered. Officer Hale didn't answer. He stepped forward slowly, like approaching something sacred, scooped the recorder up, held it out for the judge. "Your Honor," his voice cracked hard, "this may contain evidence." Samuel Drake, the man who mocked Emily, who mocked her boot, who laughed at her fear, went pale. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no, that's impossible. The police didn't. This is tampered. Someone planted. This is—" But the judge slammed his gavel so hard, the wood echoed like thunder. "Quiet, Mr. Drake." Emily trembled, Thor's head pressed against her knee. "It's okay. You're not alone now." The judge nodded once. "Play it. Time 900 pounds." The clerk connected the recorder to an old courtroom speaker, the kind that makes every voice sound eerie, too close, like a ghost whispering in your ear. Static. More static. Silence. Everyone leaned in, then. A voice. Smug. Arrogant. Sharp enough to slice bone. "Conbe se condamnai. Tau don sac mai tu roi." The courtroom froze. Even in English, the translation felt like a punch. "The kid won't talk. I cleaned everything up." A collective gasp tore through the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another, "Jesus Christ, that's him." The judge leaned forward, eyes wide. Drake stumbled backward, hitting his own desk. No, Your Honor! That doesn't prove anything. The voice could be, this is inadmissible." The recording continued. "Relax, they've got nothing. No evidence, no witnesses. The girl's too scared to say a damn word." Too scared to say a damn word. Every juror reacted. Some flinched. Some gripped their seats. One woman covered her mouth entirely. And Emily froze. Her fingers curled into Thor's fur. Harder, tighter. Her breath shook. Her chest trembled. Because for the first time ever, the world heard the monster that hunted her. Every lie, every threat, every cruelty. No longer trapped in her mind. Now spilling across the courtroom like gasoline. Drake tried to speak, tried to deny, but nothing sane came out. The judge shut him down instantly. "Mr. Drake, sit down. Now." Drake dropped into his seat. Hard. The jurors weren't neutral anymore, not even close. One whispered, "That poor girl." Another, "He threatened her." A third clenched his jaw, fists tight, like he wanted to drag Derek Miles out of his seat himself. Derek Miles sat stiff, jaw grinding, sweat pooling at his temples, his arrogance gone, evaporated. Emily finally lifted her head, not to look at Drake, not at Derek. She looked at Hale, at Thor, then whispered, "He lied." The judge's voice softened. "Yes, sweetheart. We all hear that now." Emily exhaled, a tiny, fragile breath, and for the first time since Maple Ridge, her fear cracked. Just enough to let something else in. Power, validation, truth. Derek Miles didn't silence her. Thor didn't let him. And the world finally believed her. The courtroom didn't just shift. It flipped, exploded, turned inside out. Shock, whispers, tears, gasps. People leaned forward like they were witnessing history, because they were. The twist wasn't just surprising. It was justice, striking like lightning. And the little girl everyone doubted? She wasn't broken anymore. She was the reason the truth fell out of the sky. After that recorder hit the floor like a bomb, you could feel it in everyone's bones. Something big was about to happen. Not loud big, not chaotic big, but that quiet, loaded, world-shifting kind of big. The kind that shakes a whole room without making a sound. But nobody, not a single soul, was ready for what came next. Judge Marilyn Grant had been on the bench 26 years. Murder trials, gang cases, federal disasters. People said she was made of stone, unshakable, cold, sharp. But when that recording finished, her glasses literally slid off her nose and dropped onto the bench. She didn't even pick them up. Her voice came out shaky, like she was trying to steady the entire earth. Forensic authentication approved. The courtroom gasped. That sentence wasn't normal. It meant, I believe the recording is real. I believe this child. I believe the truth is right here. The prosecutor slapped a trembling hand over her mouth. Her co-counsel whispered, "Oh my God." And the defense? Samuel Drake collapsed into his chair like someone unplugged his spine. His face drained. His jaw hung open. His hand slipped off his legal pad. He wasn't breathing through his nose anymore. Just tiny, panicked little gasps. Then there was Derek Miles, the man who thought he was untouchable, who mocked, threatened, terrorized a child. His entire mask shattered. He didn't shout, didn't deny. He broke. Right there, in front of everyone. His shoulders shook, his face twisted. And then he started crying. Not guilty crying, not sad crying, panicked crying. The kind a predator makes when he realizes the cage door just slammed shut behind him. A woman in the gallery whispered, "Serves him right." Someone else murmured, "He's done. He's completely done." And honestly, yeah, He was. Judge Grant raised her voice, not in anger, but with an authority that cracked through the room like a whip. Bailiff, take Mr. Miles into holding immediately. He will remain detained pending full forensic verification. Derek choked out, "No, wait, please, Your Honor, listen." But the bailiffs were already dragging him away. Samuel Drake tried to stand, tried to object, but his voice sounded like a dying air conditioner. The device could be spliced, tampered. Nobody listened. Nobody cared. The truth wasn't on his side anymore. It was on Emily's, and on Thor's. What happened next wasn't technically legal, but it was human. Because the second Derek was dragged out, the courtroom, this cold, strict, rule-bound box, did something shocking. People clapped. First one, then two, then 10, then the entire gallery. A full, unrestrained round of applause, echoing so loud the windows shook. The judge didn't stop it, didn't gavel it down, didn't even try. She just sat there, breathing hard, a hand pressed to her chest. Because she knew, everyone knew, they had just witnessed something miraculous. Emily flinched at the noise, instinct pulling her inward. But Thor nudged her hand, grounding her, pulling her out of that dark place. She blinked up at him. Thor's tail thumped twice. Quiet, proud, steady. Officer Hale rested a hand on her shoulder, voice cracking. "You did it, kid. You really did it." Emily didn't smile. Not fully. But her eyes, for the first time in months, didn't look like shadows. They looked like someone who finally understood. They believed her. They finally believed her. Drake rubbed his face, destroyed, defeated. No one cared. Because the hero of the room wasn't a lawyer, wasn't a judge, wasn't even Hale. It was the dog. Thor. K9 Thor. Guardian. Protector. Legend. People pointed, whispered, cried, took pictures. One woman sobbed, that dog just changed everything." And she wasn't wrong. Because in that moment, Thor didn't just save Emily. He saved the entire case. He saved the truth. He saved justice. Judge Grant removed her robe slowly, almost ceremonially. Then she looked directly at Thor. "Officer Hale, that dog deserves commendation. Effective immediately." Hale swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Honor. He does." Thor tilted his head, confused by all the emotional humans. Emily leaned down, whispering into his ear. Something soft, private, too gentle for microphones. Thor pressed his forehead into her shoulder, and for the first time since the night on Maple Ridge, Emily smiled. A tiny, fragile smile, time 300 but real. Then she whispered, "Thank you, Thor." If justice had a sound that day, it wasn't a gavel. It wasn't a verdict. It wasn't a speech. It was the echoing applause meant for a little girl and the dog who refused to let her voice die. Riverbend Veterans Square wasn't a big place. A few benches, a fountain that never worked right, and a bronze statue of 3 soldiers staring toward the mountains like they were guarding the whole town. But on that morning, it looked like a festival. People filled the square. Families, officers, firefighters, teachers, strangers who had only heard the story through whispers, flags waving, flowers everywhere, handmade signs. "Thank you, Thor. Emily, you're our brave girl. Justice wins." Kids sat on shoulders. Reporters hovered by the edges. The air smelled like pine, warm asphalt, and that crisp Colorado breeze that always hits harder after a snowfall. And right in the center, a small wooden stage draped with blue and silver. Officer Hale stood tall, polished badge, straight uniform, trying and failing not to look nervous. Thor sat beside him, chest out like a king, tail sweeping steady arcs across the wood. He wasn't nervous. He was proud. And next to him, in a simple white dress, hair tied back with a soft blue ribbon, stood Emily Carter, 7 years old, quiet, still fragile, but alive, present. And no longer afraid of the sunlight. She held the K9 boot in her hands, not to wear, but to keep. A relic, a memory, a symbol of the night the truth refused to stay hidden. Officer Hale leaned down. "You okay, kiddo?" Emily nodded. Tiny, but real. Thor nudged her elbow. She giggled. Small, fragile, like the sound was made of glass and hope. Mayor Evelyn Park stepped to the microphone. Strong woman, gray hair in a tight bun, navy blazer with the Riverbend emblem. She cleared her throat, and her voice cracked right away. "Riverbend, today we honor courage. The loud kind, yes, but also the quiet kind. The kind that survives when it shouldn't." People murmured. Some wiped their eyes already. Mayor Park glanced at Thor. And sometimes, courage has 4 legs and a tail. Soft laughter. Warm. Human. Then it was time. A decorated veteran stepped forward holding a navy velvet box. Inside, a gleaming medal, gold center, silver wings, deep blue ribbon. He read aloud, "For service above and beyond duty, for instinct, bravery, and loyalty in protecting a child and pursuing justice, we present the Valor Cross to K9 Officer Thor." Thor tilted his head, as if wondering, "Is this food?" Officer Hale knelt, attaching the medal to Thor's collar. The moment the clasp clicked, the crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, crying, joy rolling through the square like thunder off the Rockies. Thor blinked, confused, then barked one loud, proud bark. Laughter everywhere. And then everything softened. Because now, it was Emily's turn. Another box, white velvet, silver trim. Mayor Park knelt, voice gentle, steady. "Emily Carter, your voice was taken from you. and still you found another way to speak. You held the truth when the world doubted you. Emily swallowed. Thor nudged closer. Mayor Park opened the box. For that, we honor you with the silver badge of silent courage. The medal shimmered, a tiny silver star engraved with, "Courage does not always roar." Thor nudged her again, urging her, "Take it." Emily reached out, hands shaking, and touched the medal. At that exact moment, sunlight broke through the clouds. A soft glow washed over the stage. Her dress, her ribbon, her trembling smile, and Thor's proud stance. The crowd fell silent. Not empty silence. Sacred silence. Then, Mrs. Collins shouted, "We love you, Emily!" The square erupted again. Cheers, whistles, hugging, crying, joy everywhere. Thor barked, loud, confident, accepting the applause on her behalf. Officer Hale wiped his eyes, not even pretending to hide it. Mayor Park leaned in, whispering, "Sweetheart, you are Riverbend's hero." Emily looked at Thor, then at her medal, then gently tapped her badge against Thor's Valor Cross. Clink. One perfect sound. Two medals touching. Two survivors standing side by side. Two hearts that saved each other. The sun caught the metal, lighting both badges like tiny stars. And for the first time since Maple Ridge, Emily breathed. Deep, full, peaceful. Thor sat beside her, tail sweeping slow, head lowered in calm pride, guarding her, even now. And the entire town of Riverbend stood in awe of the smallest, bravest pair they had ever seen. This wasn't just a ceremony. It was healing. It was home. It was the moment a broken child and her guardian dog became living legends. After that huge ceremony at Riverbend Square, after the cheers, the medals, the crowd chanting Thor's name like he was some four-legged superhero, you'd think Emily would hold on to that K9 boot forever. I mean, it saved her. It carried the truth. It changed her whole story. But healing, real healing, isn't about collecting the pieces that saved you. Sometimes, it's about letting them rest. A few days later, Colorado slipped into one of those soft, early spring evenings, the kind where the air smells like thawed earth, and the sky turns this deep purple that makes everything feel slower, safer. Mrs. Collins drove Emily to Meadow Creek Park. Quiet trails, duck ponds, and one massive oak tree people swore was older than half the town. Thor rode in the back seat, nose pressed to the window, tail flicking, like he sensed something important was coming. When they arrived, Emily hopped out holding a small canvas tote. Not a backpack, not a toy bag. A tote. Inside was the boot. The black K9 boot that once held the recorder. The boot that felt like armor. The boot that changed her fate. But today, she carried it differently. Not clinging, not scared. Just ready. They walked slowly across the park, sunlight stretching long shadows over the grass. Thor stayed glued to her side, brushing her hand now and then, as if checking in. "You good, kid? Still with me?" Emily didn't talk on the walk. She didn't need to. The silence felt gentle. When they reached the old oak, the air shifted. Warm breeze, birds, kids laughing somewhere far away. Emily stopped. "Here," Mrs. Collins nodded, stepping back. Thor sat beside her, eyes locked on her like she was the whole world. Emily knelt, opened the tote. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, from reverence. She pulled out the boot, held it in her lap. It looked small now, smaller than it ever did in the courtroom. Emily exhaled, soft. "You were important," she whispered. "But I don't need you anymore." She reached into the tote, pulled out a small garden trowel. 1 scoop. 2 scoops. Slow, steady, determined. Sunlight filtered through the branches, dotting her hair with gold. Thor lay down next to her, chin on his paws, watching like a proud guardian. After a few minutes, she had a small hole. Emily placed the boot inside. It sat there quietly, like it understood. She looked at it, lip trembling. Not in fear, but gratitude. "I don't need it to be brave anymore." Thor huffed softly, his "I'm proud of you" sound. Emily smiled, not small, not timid, full, bright. She covered the boot with dirt, patted the earth, pressed her hand against it, sealing the past. Mrs. Collins wiped her eyes. Officer Hale, watching from the path, blinked fast, pretending he wasn't emotional. Emily stood, brushed off her hands, turned to Thor. "Come on!" And it was the happiest sound Hale had ever heard. Then she ran, actually ran, legs pumping, hair bouncing, laughter spilling out in bursts she couldn't hold. Thor barked once, joyful, and launched after her. She zigzagged between the trees, Thor matching her steps, letting her win. The sun dipped low, painting the park in lavender and honey gold. For the first time, she didn't look like a kid escaping something. She looked like a kid finally running towards something, toward life, toward freedom, toward the future she almost didn't get. She skidded to a stop near the pond, breathless, laughing. "You can't catch me!" Thor woofed back. "Watch me." And there, under a sky turning purple, with her laughter echoing across the meadow, the story that started in a freezing nightmare finally found its ending. Not in fear, not in a courtroom, not in tears, but in a little girl running as fast as she could, with the dog who refused to let her give up. And honestly, it wasn't just a happy ending. It was a beginning. If you were standing there, watching her bury that boot, what would have hit you hardest? A, watching her let go of the past, seeing Thor stay right beside her. That final run into the sunset.